Welcome, everyone. My name is Molly Sachs, and on behalf of Campbell & Company, I'd like to thank you for joining Giving Tuesday 4, Social Media, Influencers, and Brand Ambassadors, the fourth webinar in our Giving Tuesday series. Before we begin today's presentation, I'll quickly go through some logistics for those of you who are new to our webinars. Close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. We recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers. Move your cell phone away from your computer, and if you experience visual issues, send a chat to Campbell & Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar will last 30 minutes. We won't be sharing slides from the presentation, but we will be sending a link to the recording in a follow-up email. We welcome questions throughout the webinar, so please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We'll also hold time at the end for audience Q&A. At this point, I'd like to introduce Lauren Collette, consultant here at Campbell & Company.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Molly mentioned, my name is Lauren Collette, and I'm a fundraising consultant here at Campbell & Company. I've been with the firm for about 2 years now, and I'm located in our Seattle office. My background in fundraising includes board management and special events at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and I spent 3 years as the manager of annual giving at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. In my role at the museum, I managed fundraising up to the $25,000 level. I launched an annual giving program for those giving up to the $1,000 level, and I managed the museum's online fundraising campaigns, including our Giving Tuesday campaigns. So it's really great to be here with all of you today. We're going to start off today by talking about social media. So we all know that there's plenty of channels that we can use to reach different audiences for our fundraising efforts. But in today's world, and especially with our Giving Tuesday efforts, social media has become king. It's an essential and strategic channel. And I want to quickly present some numbers that support this. This is from the Giving Tuesday website itself from 2017. There were over 1 million social media mentions of hashtag Giving Tuesday itself. There were 21.7 billion impressions. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term impressions, that's defined as the number of times your content is displayed, no matter if it was clicked or not. And additionally, there was 300 million raised online from 150 countries. So clearly, social media has become a powerful tool to spread awareness and by virtue, raise money and engage people from all over the world. So this means that the strategic use of social media is no really longer an option. It's a necessity. So last year we received a lot of questions about the platforms for social media use, what to use, and more importantly, how. Our Giving Tuesday toolkit details each platform above in greater detail, but I wanted to share a few things with you while we're on this webinar today. So first, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are considered the big three. Twitter, which is the icon on the left, it looks like a bird that's chirping, is really Giving Tuesday's home. It's where the movement got its start, and it provides organizations a rapid, real-time outreach option. Millions of users use Twitter as a way to connect to the world quickly and easily in 140 characters or less. If these users are following your organization on Twitter, you're going to have the ability to communicate with them through short messages, pictures, or videos. Facebook, the icon in the middle, is another highly effective way to reach out to your constituents. Connecting with your current or potential donor base through Facebook is going to be less rapid fire than Twitter, but posts can also be more in-depth and detail-oriented. So each has their different attributes. And Instagram on the right is picture and video driven. So it's the best way to reach your constituents. One idea that we have is that you can reach your constituents is to connect your Instagram account to your organization's Facebook and Twitter's account also. That way, when you post something on Instagram, you also have the option to post the same content on your other social media channels. These clearly are not the only platforms that you can and should use. You have YouTube, which is really great for videos. LinkedIn is a really strong channel to use if you want to leverage your partnerships. And Snapchat is another platform if you're driven towards quick pictures and videos. And again, this is just a snapshot overview, but I really encourage you to look at our Giving Tuesday toolkit for more details. So what are some tips and tricks for social media use? First is a hashtag on the left. So a hashtag is literally the pound symbol, and the symbol is used in the social media universe to create a searchable term, which in turn creates a topic thread. So these hashtags or the topic threads really aggregate posts from all the other people who are using that same hashtag. So if you use a clever hashtag, anyone who uses that hashtag, all of that content will be gathered when you actually click on that hashtag link. So one idea we have is that you can create a unique hashtag for Giving Tuesday, and you can use it consistently throughout your campaign, throughout all of your social media accounts. So some examples may be hashtag GT for Giving Tuesday, and then your organization acronym. Another example may be hashtag Giving Tuesday organization acronym, or hashtag scholarships for kids today, hashtag Giving Tuesday. You want to keep these hashtags short, and we really think that ideally it should be less than 10 letters, but definitely fewer than 20 characters. So next are mentions, tags, retweets, and shares. So you want to take advantage of your social media connections through these methods. On Facebook, you can share articles or interesting posts from your partner organizations and tag them in your posts. On Twitter, you can retweet organizations or constituents who tweet at you, and you can actually use that @ symbol. And it could be, tweeting at someone who's doing something related to your cause. So one example of that may be @ Gates Foundation. Help spread the word about our hashtag Scholarships for Kids Fund, helping urban youth on hashtag Giving Tuesday. Another example is, let's say someone well-known tweeted at your organization. Maybe they said, @ organization, so impressed by your hashtag Scholarship for Kids program that helps the urban youth, hashtag Giving Tuesday. You could retweet that tweet with a @ well-known name. Thanks for spreading awareness about our hashtag Scholarship for Kids program on hashtag Giving Tuesday. So you can really use both these mentions, tags, retweets, shares, incorporate hashtags into it, and create a full social media dialogue and engagement. Another strategy is around profile pictures. And one great idea is to encourage your staff and volunteers to change their profile pictures on all of their social media platforms. We encourage you to think about something that integrates both Giving Tuesday and your organization. You can make it really easy. You can provide your staff and volunteers with an image. You could combine your organization's logo with the Giving Tuesday's logo. You could be creative and change the colors or integrate different branding mechanisms. You could also just take a picture of your staff or volunteers holding a Giving Tuesday sign and ask them to change it on their Facebook or their LinkedIn, all spreading awareness for your organization. Giving Tuesday is great to have on the screen, but most importantly, don't forget to put your organization in front of other people too, and have that on the screen as well. And then lastly is influencers. And we're going to do a deep dive into this in much greater detail in just a minute. So I'm actually going to skip over it for now, but stay tuned. So just some other tips and tricks. What else should you be thinking about? I just want to quickly walk you through some brief thoughts that we have around social media use. One, you only really want to use the sites that you have the resources to actively monitor and post on and reply to. If you don't have the staff or resources to monitor 7 channels, don't do it. I think with anything in life, it's better to manage 3 things extremely well than to manage 7 mediocrely. You're going to want to put the most effort into platforms where you have the highest engagement. If you have 1/8 of the followers on Pinterest than you do for Instagram, focus on Instagram. You want to keep your audience in mind. Analytics is a great way to understand what kind of posts have garnered the most interest in the past. Is it shorter text, longer text? Do people respond really well to images or videos? Are there impact stories that you share that gain the most traction? Think about what your audience enjoys. My old work at the Smithsonian Museum, we used to actually at the end of the year receive an email with these are the top 15 blog posts of the year. And usually you could notice a trend where people really focus in on this topic or this period in time. And that's really helpful for understanding what kind of content you should look at for the year ahead. Next, you want to show that there's a person behind your organization. Like you can like and respond to comments. People like that interactive, engaging personality behind the screen. I think personally as a social media user, I recognize who actively responds to and creates dialogue in their posts. And it's more fun, it creates conversation, it creates engagement. If you have the budget for it, we recommend you consider advertising on social media. And again, you're going to want to focus on those platforms where you have the highest organic engagement. And then when in doubt, video is really trending towards the highest engagement numbers. And so if you missed it, my colleagues just did a webinar focused on Giving Tuesday, and it's recorded called Storytelling in Video, which you can access from our website. But that gives you additional strategy around how to incorporate video in your Giving Tuesday and really all of your online fundraising practices. So, like I promised earlier, we're going to move into talking about fundraising influencers and ambassadors, which is really becoming an increasingly popular strategy at many organizations. And for the sake of this presentation, the two terms on the screen, influencers and ambassadors, they're interchangeable, and when I use one or the other, we're really talking about the same thing here. So you may be asking, okay, what is a fundraising influencer or ambassador? So what it really is the form of fundraising in which you're placing a focus on influential people rather than the target market as a whole. So what it can be is it can be a person, perhaps a company, maybe some other organization, and these entities have influence over potential donors, and it orients outreach around these influencers. Social media ambassadors are people who are active on one or more social networks, and they usually have a modest to large following. Additionally, they are willing to spread awareness around campaigns or share information. And lastly, social ambassadors can be anyone, but they really all have one thing in common, and that's that they drive action. And again, that goes back to they drive awareness, they share information, they drive fundraising efforts, whatever it is, they drive action at the end of the day. So who can be an influencer? Again, influencers can be anywhere and they can be anyone. And depending on how you want to influence your audience, you can tap into different segments of who an influencer may be. I think a lot of times, and especially with the rise in popularity of Instagram, when people are hearing the word influencer, they're thinking immediately about someone who's a VIP or a celebrity. And although they can absolutely be categorized as an influencer, I really think they're just the tip of the iceberg. And here I did a pyramid, so the tip of the pyramid. The next level down from those individuals are perhaps locally well-known names. They may have influence because of their location, their industry, their expertise level. And they're also, we have a term here called pay to play. And I think these are the new and rising names on social media who are being paid to advertise a product or bring awareness to a cause. Although you don't always need to pay someone, a lot of times this is becoming a very popular method both in marketing and that we see it shifting slightly into fundraising too. And so it is a strategy now. But what we're going to talk about today is that bottom level. So we're going to talk about those who are closest to you and likely easiest to access. I cannot sit here and give you tips on how to reach celebrities. That is just not in my wheelhouse. But I do think that there are really tangible strategies where you can reach out to your supporters, your staff, your board members, and any individuals engaged in your organization and work with them. So you may be saying, great, who's an ideal influencer then? Think about someone who's a current supporter. Again, it's your board members, it's your donors who give annually, it's the volunteers who have been involved in your organization for years. What you want is someone who has a clear interest in your organization and or the cause that your organization supports. So think about people who regularly attend events, who regularly reads and comments on your blogs. Large network is important. This is really helpful because you want someone with the ability to deliver a message to a large number of people. So perhaps this person is a local leader, maybe they serve on multiple boards in your community, maybe they have a really well-trafficked blog or website, or perhaps they're just popular on the speaking circuit, but someone who can reach a large group of people. And then lastly, a strong social media presence. Think of someone who understands, likes, and actively uses social media and their online networks effectively. These 4 components help make up an ideal influencer. What I want to say is someone may not fall into all 4 categories. They may be really strong in 3. Maybe they have an interest in your organization, strong social media presence, and a large network, but they're not yet a current supporter. That's okay. If this person cares about your mission and cares about your organization's work, they may do this on your behalf. But these are just really important components to think about. So why should I consider influencers? Social ambassadors are the driving force behind advocacy. This is really the same concept as peer-to-peer fundraising we speak of so often, and it works in peer-to-peer in person, and it works online too. I think it also ties into the power of peer influence. I mean, one of the great examples of this is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, or even all of the Facebook birthday fundraisers that are popping up lately. Power of peer influence is a real thing, and that works on social media especially. Next, it takes a village. If you're planning on leveraging social media, I think a lot of us know you just can't do that alone. So you're going to want a critical mass of passionate people to help you spread the word. And lastly, more sharing equals more awareness and more money raised, which is why we're all participating in Giving Tuesday at the end of the day. And how do we know that influencers work? If you don't believe me, here are some numbers to support this. Under engagement, open rates for emails sent by peers are about 40%, which is nearly triple the 15% average open rate for nonprofit donation solicitations. In a recent Nielsen study on which types of advertising or promotions people trust most, the top answer in North America was recommendations from someone they know. And a 2016 Georgetown study reported that 65% of people find out about a cause through their friends and family. So this next series of slides, now that we've kind of gone through and defined what an influencer is, what do they look like, how does this work, we want to talk to you about specific engagement strategies, especially something that you can do in advance of Giving Tuesday. So first, you're going to want to set goals and gain internal buy-in. So you understand where your organization is in terms of working with influencers. If this is a new thing to you, that is absolutely okay. And just think about starting small. Also, define your goals. Something easy to start with if this is a new idea for you is we want to identify and utilize 5 influencers to spread awareness and take an active social media role during Giving Tuesday. Identifying goals such as that is going to help you determine who could be an ambassador for you. Really, what is your strategy behind this? Are you trying to reach out to a certain demographic you struggle to engage? Are you just trying to boost more awareness for fundraising, or maybe vice versa? I think knowing why you're doing this is going to help you determine what type of influencers you're going to look to engage. Also, as I mentioned before, there's a good chance that influencers are already those who are closest to your organization, maybe board members, volunteers, staff members, longtime supporters. So it's critical to get buy-in from your organization's leadership, and this could be maybe board and or staff leadership. And if these folks are major donors or corporate sponsors, you're going to want to work closely with your major gift or corporate officers. Perhaps these individuals are in their portfolio, and you're going to want to work closely with them in terms of the communication, the ask to be an influencer, and the outreach. Asking someone to be an influencer is absolutely a form of engagement. It's a form of cultivation. It's a form of stewardship. And so you want to make sure that everyone who has a hand on this certain individual or relationship with them is looped in, on board, and understands the purpose of this strategy. And lastly, you're going to want to identify specific ways that influencers can help you achieve goals. You're going to want to be able to assess and track metrics. And some examples around this may be general outreach and awareness via one or more social media channels, promoting events, or sharing information with specific call to action. So what is it you're going to ask these influencers to do for you? So the next step is to identify and recruit. So we already went over who these possible influencers may be, but the next question is, where do I find them? So again, we've gone over start with your inner circle. Who are active users? Who are your board members who have large networks who are active on social media? Who are your newsletter enthusiasts? Who are your current corporate sponsors or staff? So forth. Next, you're going to want to use social media to see your organization's top mentions. Maybe there's someone who shared your pages the most who would be a great person to reach out to. Scan through your hashtags related to your cause. Maybe there's someone worth exploring for that. And if you're a animal welfare organization, perhaps there is a local influencer who really cares about animal causes that you can reach out to and discuss the strategy with them. LinkedIn has a volunteering history and causes site for people's profiles that you could look on. Facebook has a top fans app, and Twitter, just look at who retweets. Some additional indicators include who opens your newsletter consistently, who shares or comments on social media consistently. I know in my old position, there were some people who always responded to Facebook posts, or they really held a special affinity for a particular object at the museum, and they were really active online. And so these are really good indicators that someone may be willing and interested in taking this role on. And then lastly, there's always the opt-in option too. Maybe in an existing e-newsletter or survey, you want to say, we're looking for those who are willing to share our message. If you want to become an organization ambassador, contact so-and-so today. You may be surprised who reaches out to you and says, yeah, like I live in Minnesota, and I have a real passion for this cause. And when you look them up, you think, oh, wow, they're really connected around their area. I'd love to have you spread our message. So I think you'd be surprised by searching people out, but also who may come to you with this interest. And lastly, I think this always circles back to the first point too about your inner circle. Just ask around, talk to your board members if this is a strategy, talk to social networks, talk to volunteers, staff, corporate sponsors. I think you'd be really surprised, especially let's say a corporate sponsor who may say, so-and-so actually has a real passion for this. Let me connect you and see if they have interest in doing this. So just some ideas around identifying and recruiting for you. Next is consider a program structure. So the structure is going to depend on how formal you want the program to be and the amount of time and energy someone on your team can devote to ambassadors. If this is your first time working for ambassadors and you see it as a one-time kind of pilot program use, then skip this idea for now. If you regularly already work with supporters with an influencer type role and you want to take a next step with them for GivingTuesday or beyond, this is a really strategic next step. I want to remind you that your time is a resource. So this is a strategy that takes a bit more time and effort to cultivate, and it can also show great return. But strong community management is really key here, and it's the same as any other society or fundraising group at your organization. If you can't do it well, rethink about it. Just like any program group, they're going to want to understand their role. And so one idea is just put together a simple volunteer description that outlines the goal of what you define an influencer to be, set clear expectations about outreach, guidelines for participation, and so forth. Just don't forget to include what they can expect from your nonprofit in terms of support, training, and content ideas. Maybe you do a phone call with everyone a week or two out from GivingTuesday to talk about strategy. Whatever it may be, make those expectations clear to begin with. And again, you're going to want a point person to coordinate everything, so do not overpromise. One last strategic idea is segmenting these influencers for special communications. Perhaps you have a group of influencers that fall into a few categories. There is a celebrity, and there are a few local names, and there are some supporters or board members. You can think of these people as one influencer group for your organization. We've even heard of people creating a special Facebook group for everyone to join where they can regularly see posts to share or more. And then segmenting them really helps too. Those different circles, you may only want to work with some for certain efforts and therefore communicate with, let's say, board members or volunteers at a different time you would local influencers. So that's going to also impact your strategy. And it's a great tool to use in addition to GivingTuesday throughout the year. So how do you execute this before GivingTuesday? This is a sample timeline. 4 weeks before, you could contact and identify those potential influencers, start working on a very basic toolkit, something with messaging, content, or media. a couple weeks before, maybe consider a training, create a Facebook page, ask them to join that page. 1 week before, share the toolkit, provide marketing content, get them really fired up and inspired and engaged in wanting to do this for you. 1 day before, reach out with any last details, calls for questions, and then afterwards, we'll talk about this here in a second, thank them for their efforts. And something I want to emphasize is that this is a sample timeline, a good place to start. I encourage you, build your timeline around your own organization's efforts. If you need to gather buy-in or you're creating a full program structure, you're going to need more than 4 weeks to do that. But what I love about GivingTuesday personally is that we always know the date. So planning in advance and working backwards with your timeline is so doable for GivingTuesday strategies. Next, you're going to want to track metrics. So depending on your goals, you're going to want to determine which metrics to track before. Our toolkit provides examples of these. It may include metrics around donations, social media metrics such as likes or shares or open or click-through rates, or participation metrics such as how many influencers or partners were involved. As with all benchmarking, if you have baseline data from previous years, be sure to use those to compare it against. One example of that is last year for GivingTuesday, we raised X amount and had X shares on Facebook, and this year we're looking to accomplish X much more. You're also going to want to keep track of and share your ambassador-generated content. So monitor your custom hashtags. You can ask ambassadors to tag you. All of those are really helpful for being able to understand maybe if a donation is coming through that specific user. And lastly, it's a good idea to use your database to keep track of your ambassadors and their participation. Lastly, think. Stewardship is such a huge piece of all fundraising. So your influencers are going to want to know that what they're doing for their tweeting, Facebook posting, and blogging is actually helping your organization. Otherwise, let's be real, why are they doing this? So show your online supporters how they helped you get there. And social media analytics can help with that. And lastly, think of a special way to acknowledge these folks. Is it an online post, a special email? Maybe it's a card signed by some key staff members. Stewardship, most important step, and it's really no different than any form of fundraiser. So thank them before, during, and after. So with that, I know that we have about 3 minutes left, so we're going to cut to questions and see if I can help any of you out there.
Thanks, Lauren. We have a couple questions, see how much we have time for. The first question, one of our viewers has seen other people using GivingTuesday or other nonprofit-specific frames on their existing profile pictures. And so she's interested, how do we use this type of feature?
Yeah, Molly, can you repeat that again? So just about how do you incorporate GivingTuesday into your profile pictures?
So a more specific question about using those Facebook frames on existing profile pictures. So asking how do you use that type of feature to have like a GivingTuesday specific frame, for instance?
Oh, absolutely. And that is such a great question. And those Facebook profile frames are really gaining such traction for different days of the year and causes. Personally, I haven't set one up, so that's a really great question. But what I would say is that Facebook has an awesome, be able to contact them and outreach around especially causes and fundraising around causes. So I honestly, in this case, I don't have specific, here's a how-to, but I definitely think Google, and I think reaching out to other organizations perhaps who have set those up to ask them the steps in which how they did so would be really helpful. But I'm just glad that was brought up in general because I think that's a great strategy and something organizations should consider.
Great, thanks, Lauren. We have time for one more question. So from your experience, how successful is it to promote monthly giving on GivingTuesday?
I think it's a great idea. It's a great strategy. I mean, you want to tie in what your organization is doing at a larger level. So if you are able to say, give today and become a sustainer and, or have them click in somewhere where they can self-select, I'd like to start sustaining through this, be a reoccurring monthly donor. I think that's a great strategy. And I think that will also get you someone, it'll reveal who's willing to give not only once, but has a recurring interest in giving more than once to your organization. And I think that that's really the starting point for building a relationship with this individual as an annual donor.
Great, thanks so much, Lauren. Well, that is all the time we have today. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We have one more Giving Tuesday webinar coming up. That'll be right after Giving Tuesday. It'll be December 4th. That'll be on measuring success, so make sure to sign up for that. And like Lauren said, you can catch all of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel, the Campbell & Company YouTube channel. So thank you so much, and have a great day.